Hello there, faithful, brave, and patient Conscient podcast listeners. Another edition of a Conscient Roundtable, the third one. And I'm going to do it again live radio style, first take, only take kind of thing, so please bear with me. I just want to give you a quick introduction. This is an exceptional episode because it's focused on a course that myself and about 50 other people from around the world took, called Surviving the Future, and it'll all make sense in just a minute. It was recorded on Zoom on Thursday, March 20th, 2025. The participants were Kashee in India, Shaun and Marcela, who were both in Ireland that day, though Marcela is originally from Venezuela. Greg was in the United States, and I was in Vancouver. So the five of us chatted for over an hour about what we learned, and we're going to share some of their stories, that the most funny, impactful, interesting stories coming out of this 10-week course, which I strongly recommend anybody take if they're ready for a deeper dive into this idea of surviving the future. And you'll hear that I give a land acknowledgement at the beginning, recognizing the original stewards of the land where I was on that day in Vancouver, followed by a minute of silent contemplation. So, at the beginning, you'll hear Sean Chamberlain, the program leader, explain what the program is. So I won't do that now. The idea was for participants to think about the following questions. Which presentations and resources were the most impactful? How do you plan to apply this knowledge in your day-to-day life? What are some of the outstanding questions that you're still sitting with? I certainly have a lot. And I've written about it a couple of times in my A Calm Presence Substack, if you're interested. And finally, what do you think the role of arts and culture is, could be, should be in times of crisis, collapse, and renewal? And that's the ongoing question of Season 6 of Conscient. And thankfully, it went super well. We really had a rich, engaging conversation, and I want to thank my fellow Zoom participants for their generosity, courage, and really wisdom, because there was so much good learning that I took away from what they said. And luckily, we will continue, those of us who have registered in the course online after it's over. And I just want to thank the Sterling College in Vermont and Shaun, Kashee, Nicole, and all of the team who helped make this course available for their support and generosity. As usual, if you have comments, conscient.ca, social media, all that kind of thing. And of course, I invite you, if you like what you're hearing, you think it could benefit someone else, share it within your networks. And if you feel like it, give us a review on Apple Podcasts and similar kinds of things. And you can always reach me at claude@conscient.ca. So, let's start. Sit back, relax, maybe grab a drink, and listen in to episode 218, Surviving the Future. Well, welcome everyone. This is a special edition of the Conscient Podcast Roundtable. The first one I'm doing on Zoom, so it's not quite the same idea, because normally we'd be together in a room, but we have spent a lot of time together in the last 10 weeks. So it's Thursday, March 20th, 2025. So I'll just explain quickly for you and for the listeners what this is. I started a series of roundtables that I describe as being long-duration, informal banter with friends and colleagues about their passions, fears, and dreams, which is more or less what we've been doing in the last few weeks at the Surviving the Future, the deep dive course. So you are peers of mine who have done the course together, and we're going to talk today about some of the things that we've learned. We've learned so much, some of the things that we want to share with listeners and others. And I encourage, of course, people to take the course and similar courses from Sterling College. But not everyone has that opportunity to do it. So today we can at least point to the things that touched us, that were important to us, and then just continue the dialogue, which is a big part of it. For instance, I'll talk about some of the things that touched me, and there's one that Shaun knows about, and that he helped organize. That he organized around Isabelle Frémeux. So, for instance, when an artist comes in and talks about their work, and I had not known their work before, it was really stimulating to read, and I'm writing about it. So it really triggers some interesting reflections, self reflections, but also what we can do in the world, what we want to do further. So, without further ado, I'll start with a minute of silence. What I suggest is that we think about, meditate upon the traditional custodians of the lands and waters wherever you are today, both for the participants and for listeners. So I'm in what's called Vancouver, which is traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And in this context, unceded means nations that have never ceded their territories to the Crown. And the land acknowledgement in this way shows respect for the land and an opportunity to reflect on the impact of colonialism and engage in reconciliation, which is an ongoing process here in Canada. So if you join me for 1 minute of silence, and then we'll start. Okay, thank you. So maybe I'll ask Shaun just to say a couple of words about the origins of the course so that people know where it came from and why it exists, and then we can share our experiences in the 2025 edition.
Sure. Okay, 2 minute version. So I had a mentor called David Fleming, and he passed away in 2010. And he had this unpublished work called Lean Logic, a dictionary for the future and how to survive it. And the starting point for his work, which he was writing since the 80s, was that the dominant culture is unsustainable and it's going to end. That there are all these stories about, hey, we should reform in this way and we should have a revolution and we should have this cultural great turning. And he had come to the point of being unconvinced that was going to happen. And so his starting point was, okay, well, then what makes sense? How does it make sense to prepare for such collapse? How does it make sense to think about how that might unfold and to think about what life looks like on the far side of that? And after he died, I brought that book to publication and also a book I edited out from it called Surviving the Future. And those books developed a bit of a following. And so out of that developed this Surviving the Future, the Deeper Dive online course as a space where people could come to kind of explore and reforge some of those principles in the context of today's reality and what it means to live through. I mean, his book, as I say, was called A Dictionary for the Future and How to Survive It, but it now feels like a dictionary for the present, really. And so a chance to come together. And as David always said, he was just interested in opening conversations, not, writing the final word on anything. And so it feels a very appropriate continuation of his work to explore and evolve those ideas together in good company.
Mm-hmm. Well, who wants to start? Who has a story to tell about surviving the future?
Yeah, I can start. I think I've done this course 3 times. I did it the first time in 2020. The first time was it? Like, yeah, when COVID came. So basically, the first time it was run, and very funnily, I'm not a Facebook fan, but it was thanks to Facebook and its fucking algorithm that I found it. It just popped up in my thing. So I had no clue who Sean was, who David was, anything. I had none of the more environmentally inclined friends in Ireland. I had no connection to it, and it just popped up. I gave it a go, and that's how I met Sean, and that's why I live where I live now. So it's taken me places, and I'm very grateful for that. And what struck me for since the first time I did it was, I don't know, this big resistance against the narrative of potential collapse. When I heard, like, I grew up and lived in Venezuela for a long time, a country that, according to people's fears, was what collapse was going to look like. And we're like, and I came from a place in which that had happened, and we were still alive, and we were still doing stuff, and we were still having parties, and shitloads of things were still happening. So I think I just developed an interest of other people's narratives towards things that are realities for other people, for us, for me, for Venezuelans. And I don't know, at some point I was like, oh my gosh, you don't know what you're talking about. That's already happened. Like, very entitled because of my story. And then I've been living in Europe for a long time. Obviously, things are different. And I'm just happy to come from a different perspective, but also be enriched by other people's experience of yeah, the side of the world I'm living in, side of the world I'm living in now. So yeah, it's an ongoing conversation. I think that was really helpful that Sean said that. Like, I think also coming from Germany, like culturally, it became kind of very necessary to have definite and final answers to specific questions, and in a almost like in an obsessive way, which I found really kind of unnatural and not helpful. So just him saying it again was like, oh yeah, there's not an ending point. There's not a conclusion that we'll like reach and then start doing things. It's on the doing, on the questioning and stuff. So yeah, I think I'll share that for now. Thanks.
Well, I'm a two-timer for the course. I found out about it partly because I'd been following Nate Hagen's and some other podcasts, and Sean spoke to some folks that I listened to about this course that was coming up right at the time that I was thinking that I was going to get out of my high-tech day job and go do something that actually mattered. And one of the things that I wanted to do was teach myself more. And so I was thinking that I would just sit down with podcasts and learn everything I could, and then found out that there was, in fact, a cohort group that I could sit with and learn together. And it seemed like such a great opportunity. Um, and this year I decided to come back because it was a great opportunity to meet people with similar ideas and interests, people who took this, you know, modernity is not working uh, mindset, and then said, but we're here, so what now? Instead of, the technohopium, oh, well, we'll just go to Mars and then everything will be fine. Or some of the dark side of collapse where it's, well, it'll be Venus by Tuesday, so, just give up all hope and drink yourself into oblivion or something like that. And so I was really appreciative of getting to be a part of a group with this kind of walking the middle path between the light and the dark, and wanted to just continue to meet more new people and in that context, while also, planning for the spring planting of many trees and things along those lines that I can do locally, to try to act on the vision.
I guess it's my turn. I've taken the course only once, and that was this year. And how I found the course was that I continue to listen to Upstream a lot, and I was listening to Upstream a lot at the time. And one of their episodes was sponsored by EcoGather, and through EcoGather, I found this course. And um, it's a lot of what Greg said about the walking the path between the light and the dark. That's what spoke to me about the course, because where I'm from, you don't have a lot of overlaps between people that are sort of spiritual and people that want to have this conversation about collapse and things like that. So it felt really refreshing to hear Shaun talking about these things, and that's why I wanted to do the course. And um, just the way it's done, that the starting point for the course is reading this book. I think it's amazing that all of us get onto that same page to start with, because in the past I've actually met someone that tried to talk to me about collapse and it didn't work. It was just like I thought he was being very extreme, but just the way it's structured, maybe by week 1 or 2 everyone gets on the same page that this is happening. And I think it's so important. The way it was done was really good. And yeah, I found the reflection sessions really helpful, and just doing all of this in a group, it makes so much sense, because if you do it alone, you're crazy, and you can't do it alone. So that was quite something. And in one of the reflection sessions, Shaun said something about how when I said I wish there were spaces like this for me, in-person spaces where I could talk to people, where I kept being held back by the idea that even if I were to, hold a space like this, it would not be accessible to so many kinds of people. And Shaun said, by default, you can't have a space that's accessible to everyone. And that just opened up something for me. So I now have a group. I have an in-person group where we can talk about these things, and it feels so good. And we meet once a week. Yeah, it fills my whole heart to have this. So yeah, thank you. There's more stuff I've taken away from the course. Some of the stuff that I think was kind of there in me, but I didn't have the conviction. I think those things have become stronger, like something that Shaun keeps saying, that the spirit of an action is more important than anything else. I think I'm able to recognize what that means in different situations. And one thing that's done for me is that I'm no longer able to, for example, look at ideas like doing that master's course or something like that, which would sort of entrench me further in these systems that actually serve the system rather than serve life itself. So yeah, I'm feeling really good coming out of this course. And yeah, thank you, all of you.
Well, I thank you, all of you, for that, because that's a good beginning to know why we did this, and to hear some of the stories. I heard about it from a friend, Sarah Hainan, who I actually did an interview with in Toronto last week, and you'll be able to hear that in the little 15-minute series. And she just said, this is the right thing for you now. And it was, because I was producing a lot of podcast interviews about art and collapse, and I felt I was kind of repeating a lot of the same things, and I needed to freshen up. I didn't realize that the course would be so transformative because of access to all of these different ideas, thoughts, spiritual practices that, once they're layered, inevitably carry you somewhere. They took me into another level of awareness and actually calm me down, especially that very last section with Eve. And I'll put all these links in the episode notes so people know what I'm talking about. It was very troubling, when Nate Hagens began. I wrote a piece about it. He really just hit hard with reality, right, and facts and science, and that was hard to swallow. Even though I knew those things, it sank in deeper where we're at. But then him and others, as time passed, we looked at nuance, we looked at history, we looked at, and we listened to each other, our own expertise, because a lot of people in the course are very advanced in their reflection and in their action. They're people, they're farmers and they're activists and they're all kinds of people doing things. And so, like Kashee was saying, the conversations, the reflection sessions, were an opportunity to listen to others and to listen to ourselves, because in the trust that came with the group conversations, I said things I didn't know I knew, or I didn't know I thought, because they came out during these trustful, long hour-and-a-half conversations that we enjoyed every week, and will continue to enjoy, because there's monthly sessions and there's this this Zoom room that we have access to. So it's really good that we're not abandoned, so to speak, after the course. That would be hard. So we can reach out to each other and continue conversations. And there's a whole group of alumni from the very first course that continue to exchange. And so, yeah.
It's really interesting to me hearing these reflections. As I guess obviously it would be, but like it, what Kashee said about, you know, it being impossible to do alone. Yeah, that was another really big part of my motivation in this, is that when I started seriously engaging with this stuff around the year 2000, I guess, I really had that sense of kind of feeling quite alone with the apocalypse. You know, it was just there kind of, there were a few resources out there. There was a Paul Schifferka had a website called dieoff.org, and but like lots of the responses were very survivalist. Like if anyone was talking about it at all, it was all like, you know, get guns and tinned food and and yeah, so a big part of the process for me was, it was sort of the mid 2000s when I really found a peer group around this, and just how one of my favorite lines from one of my favorite poems is many fears are born of loneliness and fatigue. And I think, you know, trying to engage with this stuff alone, I don't know if it is impossible, but it should be disallowed because it's such a different process to do it in company. And that course Marcela mentioned, the first iteration of this back in 2020, was a very strange experience because, you know, I'd been developing this with my colleague then, Philip Ackerman-Leist, for about 18 months before we were launching. And we thought, you know, maybe 30 people will sign up. You know, that would be great. We'd be delighted if 30 people signed up. But because we launched in April 2020, when COVID was just sort of spreading across the globe, and suddenly, you know, lots of people were out of work and wondering what to do with themselves. Lots of people were trying to find something to do online. And lots of people were worried about the shape of the future. And we had over 300 people sign up in 3 weeks. And it hadn't occurred to us at all that we might need to cap numbers. You know, we were just like, hopefully some people will come. And so we didn't. We just accepted everybody. And as Marcela will attest, it was quite a seat of the pants ride. And, you know, it was great, but it was hectic and it was overwhelming, and some things fell by the wayside. And so it then became clear to me, at least, that we needed to kind of cap it. And the next course we capped at 100, and then that still felt too many. And so now it's 60 that we just say, okay, you know, that feels like a size of group that allows for those relationships that you were all talking about to kind of happen. And you know, I'm a big fan of an inch wide and a mile deep, which feels quite countercultural in a world where everything's about scaling out and growth. I'm much more interested in doing something that's really as deeply valuable as it can be for the people in it. And if not everyone can get in it, then hopefully people go and create other things, and it kind of scales out as other people start creating spaces like this, which they have. And so yeah, it's a pleasant reflection for me so far, this roundtable, to kind of look back on how we got here and hear about how where we are is, yeah, striking people.
Well, one of my favorite moments was the very last session where there was a carnival, and it's hard to imagine an online carnival. But if listeners look at the work of David Fleming, it's a big part of his, I call it aesthetic, I guess, it's joy, celebration, music, art. And so we were pretty silly. I took people for a sound walk here in Vancouver, and there were lots of wonderful things. But at the end, during the and I'm sure you orchestrated all this, Shaun, but you started a fire, and I think you were in Ireland and still are. So there was a fire burning in Ireland that was quite, you know, big and lovely. And then as the event wrapped up, it slowly was tinkling away. And then Shaun read this beautiful text that was very moving. And I just felt like this is the way to end a long journey with friends, with joy, and with quiet and words very slowly that you could come in and out of. So I just want to acknowledge that as a beautiful poetic ending to a very intense 10 weeks of conversation. And in the end, who are we but animals or beings who gather around fires and try to survive, right? That's the ultimate thing about anyone on the planet. We're looking for heat and home and love. And there it was, you know.
Yeah, and I'd like to acknowledge on that ritual, that ceremony, was co-created with Lucy Neal, whose work I think you're familiar with, Claude, who was one of our guests on the first Surviving the Future course. And I've got to say, I had no idea how on earth we could do an online carnival. It was my colleague Philip who had the idea, and I was like, "What's that?" And he's like, "I don't know, but we've got to do it." And then, yeah, talking to Lucy about how to close it. Yeah, I mean, it's iterated very slightly over the last years, but the essence of it is very much hers, and I'm very grateful for that. You know, she's a very skilled creator of art and ritual and indeed carnival. So yeah, thank you, Lucy.
I'm wondering how often it's occurred that you've had someone who is a participant in the course actually be able to join you, because I know last year that happened as well, and obviously I wasn't part of it before that, but it's nice to see, you know, faces that are normally in separate Zoom screens suddenly in the same Zoom screen for the closing.
Yeah, there's quite a few people who I've or you mean for the carnival specifically? Because yeah, there's quite a few people I've met in person, and indeed, obviously Marcela's ended up living with us at the Happy Pig. But yeah, carnival, yeah, 3 or 4 times people have joined in person, because Mary Therese, who also now lives with us and is now Mock's partner, took the course last year and so was able to be part of it. And yeah, there is something. It's funny, isn't it? Like, we all know what Zoom is and how it works, but it almost feels like an astonishing thing when these are actual people, you know, that can actually take physical form and be in the same space as us. Yeah, I was trying to convince Mark to come. Mark Boyle is one of our one of my friends, one of the people we live with at the Happy Pig, at this sort of gift economy project that we're part of, and was one of the guests earlier in the course. And I was trying to convince him to come and dance naked around the fire just in the background while I was doing the carnival, but sadly he demurred. So apologies, guys. I tried.
If you don't know Mark Boyle, look him up. He's like the Brad Pitt of the hippies, basically. Like like the coolest environmentalist. Like he for a long time he was a very thought out man here in the Irish countryside. So interesting character if you don't know him. But I have a technical parenthesis question. Is this going to be edited,
Nope.
Claude? Okay, good.
Oh, I thought that was a lead into something you definitely didn't want to be edited out.
No, there's much more happening inside, so it's just good to know. Yeah.
Marcela, are you reminding yourself not to swear, or is this more than that?
That's the first point. Yeah. Thank you, Kashee.
And you know, the carnival really felt like a real in-person ritual. I didn't at all feel like it was a Zoom meeting. And I had the privilege of going to sleep after this, so it was quite magical, actually.
And I love that you also lit a little fire where you were, Kashee. So it felt like, yeah,
Yeah.
felt like we had little beacons around the world of our carnival.
Yeah, Kelly had one also.
Mhm.
It was, I know yours was real work, but having my little fire up was also some work. It kept going out. You know, I also wanted to acknowledge that sometimes so many people have said so many things over these 10 weeks, and sometimes we can take it for granted, but sometimes a
Maybe
small
that's a good
thing can
metaphor,
go such a
Kashee.
long way. Sorry, what?
Go
As a
ahead, continue.
lesson.
There was a digital something.
Ah, okay. No, I was just saying that so many people have said so many things over these last 10 weeks, and sometimes a small thing can go such a long way. And for example, I've only shown up for two of the sessions that Marcela hosted, the somatic listening sessions, but they were so valuable. It felt so, it felt really good to be there. It felt really grounding. And I feel like I've been able to carry whatever I've learned from those sessions into real life when I have conversations with people to kind of have conversations in the way that Marcela's guidelines ask us to. And yeah, then we talked about some pretty big stuff in these reflection sessions. There was one session where I don't know, I thought you said it's a repeat question, Shaun. It shows up every year. You said about kids, about having kids, and what everyone had to say. And I don't know, I didn't properly thank everyone for that, because it was something to actually to receive that from so many people that have more life experience. And that has been actually a pretty important thing for me that's come out of these 10 weeks, to have a different perspective on all of that. So that's quite something.
Yeah, I mean,
Hear
for
me
context
now.
for listeners, the reflection sessions are just a space where we all come together and there's no sort of agenda, and we just reflect together on whatever people bring. Yeah.
Marcela, did you want to explain the somatic listening? Because I also was very touched by that process. It looks like you might be frozen, Marcela. She might have to
He's
be
in deep
connected.
somatic listening.
Check. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. There you are.
Maybe until Marcela can come back, I'll say that as well. So Claude mentioned this 24/7 Zoom room, and lots of people took advantage of that to run sessions that, we as the organizers had nothing to do with organizing. So there were, these somatic listening sessions that Marcela organized. There were a number of participants in Vermont organized an event, so a recurring event where they just came together and talked about more local things. One of our participants is a poet and organized a collapse poetry session every Saturday. So yeah, just having come together as 50 or 60 people, people just created what felt needed in the space. And it's really nice as the kind of lead organizer of the program to sometimes go along to a session that you had nothing to do with organizing, and someone else is just holding, and you think, wow, yeah, I'd really like to talk about that, and just turn up and be a participant. It kind of feels well, I think one of the principles of Carnival is the overturning of kind of orders, and it feels really nice to not have to take that kind of organizing and holding the space role a lot of the time.
Do you want to try again, Marcela? We can see you.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's so many things I want to talk to, but I just want to go back to the first time I was cut off. So basically, Kashee, when you were saying about the fire turning off, having difficulties keeping the fire on, I thought that was a really powerful metaphor, because at least for me, when I did the course the first time, I was like, yes, this is the right direction. But I was living in Germany, working in the financial system, financial business. And so there was so much, whenever I felt like there was a little bit of ember of hope, I just felt like I'd be poured with cold water. So it took also a lot of kind of inner resilience and really doing the work of finding allies, be it people, books, whatever, to kind of trust that little spark of possibility, I would say, was leading somewhere. So I don't know, it just reminded me of the importance of, yeah, we've been, I don't know, given this gift, have had this chance, whatever you want to say, talk about it. And it does require, or at least, some kind of, yeah, what you were saying is, yeah, company, like other people that you're not trying to convince, that are already living or embodying some of the things that we want to go, because then that gives us the strength to continue. So yeah, that's the first thing. And then I think for me, just wanted to share some of the nuggets. It's been lots of things, but there were a couple of quotes that really did it for me. I think since I was a child, I've always had obviously existential issues, what the fuck am I doing with my life, blah 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 blah. And there was this quote, who I think it was Martin Luther King mentor or something like that, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is more people that are alive. And then it was like, yes, I don't have to learn everything about everything in order to figure out what it is that I have to do, because everything is so screwed up. I can just kind of start to focus on the things that bring me joy, and that's been really, really hard, in the sense of giving myself permission to act from that place. And at the same time, it felt like, like when a big fat grandmother just gives you a hug and like kind of crushes your bones and you can relax, you're like, oh, okay, this is the kind of encouragement I need. So I think that's for me, like even after the 3 years I've done it, the thing I still take away, that sense of, or that allowance or permission or invitation or possibility of acting from a different from a different place. And just to wrap, also destruction, what the one of Edward Abbey, like sentiment without action is like the destruction of their soul or something like that. Like I've always cared a lot, but didn't know how to put that care into proper action. I'm still figuring it out. It's not that I have it figured out, but that was also something that came with this course or the people I've met through here. So yeah, I think it's helpful at many levels, but there's sometimes just the little things, the specific song, the specific, I don't know, session, or the specific 2 lines in Surviving the Future book that make you laugh and like, I'm laughing on a book. How silly is this? That just, yeah, made it come really alive. So yeah, that's that's the takeaway question for me.
I think there have been lots of things like that for me as well, Marcela. Sometimes just small things that I know are building up. And I feel like someone like Greg, for example, is so intelligent, he's going to probably hold on to more information than I might. But, oh, please. But I feel like I can trust that all the amazing resources and all the different forms that have been shared over these many weeks have kind of gone inside me, and they will do their work if they've not already. And that feeling of trust, I think, is so much stronger now after doing the course, and that's quite something. And like Marcela said, sometimes it can be a song, sometimes it can be an article. Obviously, that lecture from Albert Bartlett, was it? I think it was. It was also pretty, so many life-changing resources actually in this course. And I'm actually enjoying taking my time to slowly share some of these to people in my in-person life. Yeah.
I sometimes wonder how it can be that, Albert Bartlett was lecturing on how people didn't understand exponential growth in the 1980s. Was that when that was filmed? Maybe even earlier. And we still don't learn it. We still don't teach it. So, it was very powerful. And then on the musical side, I just keep hearing Rue Mundy's and Time of Coral Reefs running through my head at odd times.
I just want to say how excited I am that she's kind of catalyzed an in-person gathering. Like that's just the best. Like it makes me so happy when I hear about, because I had hesitation about, I'm not really a fan of the online world. I'm much more a fan of, being where we are physically. And I think our attention is the most precious thing we have. It's the way that we affect and make sense of what it is to be alive. And yeah, I really have hesitation about encouraging people into kind of online spaces. At the same time, I think, the magic of the fact that, we've already been talking about how interesting it is for, Marcela to be thinking about her background in Venezuela and to be talking. I mean, even on this call, we've got people from England and, well, I don't know where you're all from, but England, Canada, Ireland, America, India. So like the ability to almost time travel in the sense, you will know that I love this line. The future's already here, it's just unevenly distributed. And so given that, the ability to hear from people who are in a place where they can still go like, oh, I don't know, this whole collapse thing feels a bit far-fetched, you know, and then speak to other people who are like, no, that feels like right now, and other people who are like, that feels like 5 years ago. It's there's something really valuable about it. And I get so excited when I hear that people are meeting in person, and even, you know, when someone for whatever reason is making a trip, and we've now got this, you know, map of where people are in the world, and so they'll be like, hey, you know, I'm going to be in that state or that country, like, you know, maybe I could come visit, maybe I could come stay. And like, often I hear about, I'm sure I don't, but often I hear about these, you know, you won't believe who I met up with the other day. And it's just such a nourishment to me that yeah, that this isn't just some online space that we kind of pull people out of their physical existence to join, but also a catalyst to people, yeah, getting to have those conversations in person and those hugs and those, you know, connections. So yeah, thank you for sharing, Kashee.
Those citizen connections, I think, are also important regionally because I was quite offended, still am, by the behavior of the US government towards Canada, but not the people of the US generally. And so, you know, I live in Ottawa. Vermont is quite near. A lot of the participants live in Upper New York State or Vermont. And I haven't been there in a while, and I will. And I invited people to our place. And those in-person gatherings can be very good to deepen regional connections. And we talked a lot about regionality in the course. I wanted to say something that I wrote on my Substack a piece called Looking Youth in the Eyes, and it came out of the course because we were talking about parenting and not about bringing a child in the world so much as looking a child or a young person in the eye and having a dialogue about their future. And, you know, as parents, as citizens, how do you do that? We all, well, a number of us agreed that that was a really difficult thing to do because of the challenges that we face. And yet, I feel more prepared to have those conversations with young people than ever before because there are a lot of things going on that are very positive and they need to be connected. And we are connecting them through our work, through our thoughts, through our networks. And in that piece, I said there were 5 things that what do I call them, learned and unlearned. And a couple of them I think are worth repeating. One is the quote that came up a lot by Maya Angelou: do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better. It's so obvious, right? It's like, but it's a really good one to think about, you know, not getting caught up in guilt and I could have done, you know, hey, you learned something, you can do better next time. It can be in a second, it can be in an hour, it can be in a week, whatever. But that one struck me. And also we were honored by the presence of Vanessa Andreotti and Gina Andreotti and one of the presenters. And one of the things they talked about is when the children born today look back 30 years from now, what actions would they be grateful that we took right now? Which is a really good question to ponder in terms of the seeds that we're planting, the seeds of cooperation, the seeds of bioregionalism, and all the things that we talked about that are very real. Like they're not abstract ideas; they're actually things that are happening. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's exactly it, Claude. Like 2 things came up for you. I'm happy that you brought up this child, like the children, future generations thing, because on the one side, I think, I don't know, I don't have many contact with a lot of children, and at the same time, the ones that I have had contact with, I think many of them, children, teenagers, are much more, maybe not consciously and theoretically aware of the context, but there's like a knowing in their soul that they have to step up. And what I'm trying to explore for myself now is like, how are we going to support them in doing that job instead of kind of us having to think, okay, we need to deconstruct and decolonialize and all of these big asks before we talk to them. I think I'm not saying that you're saying that, but like I'm really thinking like, and that's one of the reasons I guess I did the listening sessions. A lot of our work now is about listening, I think, and being a bit more quiet and letting other people from different ages, from different spaces speak, because there's lots of things that are, as I said, maybe not theoretically backed up with a footnote, but there's a knowing there, I think, especially for, yeah, that's been my experience with younger people that I've been dealing with or been in contact with. And at the same time, I'm really happy that you brought up Vanessa's participation, because yeah, I don't know if you listeners know about her work or their work, the collective's work, really important work. And it does ask for a lot. And I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for a lot. But I think what came up for me in the course was kind of a realization that the fact that we're able to theoretically make the asks of what we need to do in order to get to where we want to be needs to be done not only from a theoretical intellectual perspective. There's a lot of energetic somatic deconstructing work that needs to be done, and the fact that we know that we want to do it doesn't mean that we're ready for to do it, and that it doesn't mean that we're all going to do it in the same way and at the same time, and we're going to arrive to the same conclusions in order to be able to come out of our comfort zones in order to do things differently. And this is why, like, there's this really interesting woman called Leah McKenna, I think, and she's Irish and Tuvalu. She's also doing indigenous work, but from a very different perspective. And one of the things she says that I found really, really helpful is like, we need to be able to kind of have, I'm putting words in her mouth, but basically she says we need our bodies to be kind of strong enough to make the asks that we're asking them to do. So like maybe going some steps backward, putting good nutrients into ourselves. I'm talking actual nutrients, metaphorical nutrients at every level. So when we do show up with the best intentions, we have the stamina, the resilience, whatever word is appropriate, to do the work from a place that's not from guilt, that's not from remorse, that it's not from denial, but it's like, okay, this is going to be tough work, but we have the thing to do it. And for me, this was like a really good, I don't know, reminder of where we're asking ourselves to be in order to do the work we've tried to identify we need to do. Yeah, I got a bit nervous there, but I've been wanting to say this for a long time. So now you just saved me writing a big post in the thing. Thanks.
Well, we haven't talked about the somatic listening yet, and I think it's worth talking about because it's about listening and not immediately responding with a solution. And that's one of the problems we have, is that we're trying to desperately to find solutions to problems that are so large. The Industrial Revolution, things that have been going on for hundreds of years, there won't be one solution. But one part of our presence is listening deeply. And we did that every Thursday morning at 10, and we're doing it now, right? It's reflecting upon what the person is saying, but also where they're at and how they are and what they need. And they might just need a bit of compassion. They might need a link to an article, and there's all kinds of things. But until we actually slow down and listen, really listen, I think we're spinning our wheels, which is okay, but deeper experiences come, I think, from, and that doesn't mean you're not active, right? You can be slow and very active. It seems contradictory, but it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to share the guidelines if you want to put them in the part of the whatever you want to do with them, because yeah, as I said, like this is not about me holding the space. It was me about being in this space for some time and understanding like there's so much need to feel companionship within our doubts and our understanding, and at the same time, when I first encountered the space, like, oh my gosh, I want to share all of my perspectives so people can connect. And then a lot of people came with that same energy. And then it was kind of a cacophony, or like, I don't know, like people talking about each other because we were so desperate to be heard. And in that, learning to listen, I think is, a good way for the discernment to develop, and to be able to know what to say, when to say, how to act. So it's an ongoing practice. I think I'm really grateful, Claude, that you were there since the beginning. Greg was also there a couple of times, Kashee too, Shaun also. So it was really cool to also have people show up and practice it. And I mean, you would have noticed. It's not like we came in and we were all talking from our soul. No, I mean we went head into head many times, and that's the thing. It's a practice, you know. We set out with the intention. We try to relax the body a little bit, but we are accustomed to living in our head, many of us. So it's obvious and it's normal that we're going to talk from there. And at the same time, we can read and we can slow down and we can remember. We can take the time. So it's yeah, it's a practice. So I invite everybody to practice if you want to.
And also to laugh, you know, and Nikasi Fortune, who was part of the team organizing this, at one point we had a session about what made us laugh and what joy did we bring out of all this relative darkness. And I have trouble with that because I feel the pain, you know, and I empathize with the suffering, and it's hard to find joy sometimes, but we did.
I'm a big fan of, somebody said, if you don't have gallows humor, all you've got is the gallows. And yeah, I have a lot of time for that perspective. But I wanted to pick up on something Marcela just said about, like, maybe we have an idea of how we'd like to respond, and that might be on the big scale, like, oh, I want to go and, I don't know, start a permaculture farm, or it might just be, you know, I want to come with patience and calm to the spaces that I'm in. And yeah, just what Marcela said really nailed for me something that I hadn't really got before around, I don't know, I often find myself thinking like, I want to be like that. And so I'm sort of trying to hold myself to that intention. And that's just, yeah, very different from being where we are. And it can often lead to this divide in my life between, you know, maybe I spend, I don't know, 10 hours a day feeling like, yeah, I'm doing the thing I want to do. And then it's kind of tiring because I'm having to hold myself to it. And so then there's other time where I'm, I don't know, laughing with a friend or unwinding or just, you know, exhausted or whatever it may be. And what comes to mind for me now, I think it's a John Lennon lyric. Life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. And yeah, it's really, I don't know, it's still very new in me. I'm still digesting it, but the idea of like, how do we change what we do while we're busy making other plans rather than just, you know, making better plans? Like, how do we change the feeling of our moments and of our, yeah, the things that we fall back into from our great intentions? I have no more to say because it's all very new, but I guess it also ties into what Marcela was saying about, you know, after collapse we're still having parties, right? Like, you know, we're still eating, you know, we're still hanging out, we're still doing all the things that humans do. And yeah, let's explore how those spaces feel and are, rather than just having grand intentions, which we strive for a lot of the time and then fall back into those, something like that.
When there isn't a difference between hanging out with friends and chatting around a meal and doing the work, and it's all just part of the same grand scheme.
I think that's a really good reminder, Greg. Thanks. Because yeah, if not, it just becomes too heavy and too boring. For me, also like too boring if it's always the to do, the to do, the to do, the perfect people we need to be in order to be able to be dignified enough to have. Oh bloody fuck! No, how boring. Sorry, no swearing.
I never said there wasn't any swearing. Well, you raise a big one there, Shaun, because we're going to have a whole other session on that, I think. But I remember at one point, Gary Hoover was one of our colleagues, talked about what comes out through dialogue, through informal, unscheduled, or curated dialogue like we're having now. And there is a kind of energy and exchange. It's just subtle, but it happens even over Zoom as we talk to each other and kind of feel our way around conversations and meander a bit. And then I retain a type of energy, kind of solidarity, friendship, that kind of thing. But there's also another thin layer of residual thought and intention, like something is raised in a conversation that stays. One of the reasons I'm doing this is, in particular in person, I'm trying to get people together who might not know each other and want to spend time together. Like I use the metaphor of a kitchen party, but at kitchen parties, sometimes it's so interesting because people are so passionate about what they're talking about, and it can be something light, something heavy, but they're able for it to resonate in other beings, and therefore the story comes alive. I don't know who talked about that in my life, but they said stories are alive. They are living beings. They have a trajectory. They have a way of being in the world. And that's so interesting, just to allow that to happen, to say, my story is inside, it's coming out or not. It's been received, it's been modified, it's been carried through, carried on. Somebody else will tell my story, I'll tell their story. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's exactly what meditation is for. That's why, like, sometimes I think, like, oh my God, we have to decolonize. Why don't we just meditate, become like fully human, and then life is the eternal dance, So I think what you're saying, like, sounds very obvious on the one hand, and then sometimes I just get angry because we've complicated it so much. So I don't have anything against doing the colonization work. The only thing that I think about is, like, if we were all be able to, at some level, at the same time, I'm not sure how to phrase it, connect as humans, then I look to you in the eyes. We know we fucked up at different levels, our history, our ancestors, blah blah, and at the same time, I don't feel the need, Marcela. I'm talking to make certain acknowledgements, not because I'm disrespectful of your history or how oppressed you've been, but, like, I'm seeing you as a human just as valuable as myself, if I have a bit of self-esteem. If not, obviously it's a different conversation. So yeah, I think, yeah, you need to make another session because this is a big one for me. But, like, the humanity, the seeing people as equal, like, I don't understand how we've become so distant from it. I know there's historical reasons, blah blah blah. But oh my gosh, I don't know. I really feel like a lot of us that have gone into spiritual practices is exactly, or at least me, to look for that thing that we know is true, and for practices to enable that knowledge without having to, do 3 PhDs and come to Earth 25,000 times if you believe in reincarnation.
This crossover, though, between, decolonization and storytelling and PhDs and things like that, again, reminds me of Vanessa and GTDF's work, and the idea of wording the world versus worlding the world, like actually experiencing the world as it is, experiencing people as they are, not as some word that categorizes them into a category, which then you respond to with, fear or pity or anger or whatever. They're not a category, they're a person, right? And I'm not sure, but I think there's at least a passage in the Hospicing Modernity where she talks about how the process of writing down our stories means that they stop living in the way that they used to. And so sitting together, talking like we're doing and telling our stories person to person, even through this technology, is somehow more of a living thing than if we were just write all of this down on a forum post or something.
I'm hesitating to speak because there are dogs barking, and I feel like those barks will get recorded.
I love soundscape and sound, so go for it. No problem.
Okay. But David Abrams said this in his talk, where he said that he said in no uncertain terms, he said, we cannot rejuvenate the world without telling stories, face-to-face stories and face-to-place stories. And I've been thinking about that because what does that even mean? I mean, it does mean all the things that all of you said, but it feels like it means many things. And uh, yeah, I think that's actually been a big takeaway for me from this course, just acknowledging the importance of stories. And because GTDF's work is coming up again and again, I've also been feeling that that list that they have in Hospicing Modernity, the co-sensing with radical tenderness list, I feel like everything that you can take away from this course basically helps you do the things in that list and live out that list. And that's actually so beautiful.
The Vanessa and Gina mentioned, well, they've written a book about AI, which I recommend people not only read but listen to, because there's some interesting podcasts with the AI characters. But also, there's a new book coming out that Vanessa is writing. It'll come out in the summer, and it'll be interesting to see what the follow-up is. And there's so many of those writers and thinkers that we encountered during the course. We can't name them all because there's so many. We've sampled some of them, and I think that's part of it as well. Is the work that touches us. We can talk about, we can share links, but we can tell the story. And I try to do that when I do my podcast interviews. Is try to draw out what people are what is informing them, what is impactful for them. And sometimes it's a poem, like we had those wonderful poetry sessions on Saturday morning with my colleague from Edmonton, and there was magic in hearing the poetry that's important for the people at that time. And so those kinds of, and without, I don't want to get too sentimental because we do need to do real work in life, but the poetry and the art is life in my world. It is what life is about, and it's not a separate thing. And so this whole issue of separation that is often talked about, I think, is one that we can reconcile through living just as ordinary beings. And I don't use human beings because I consider the more than human world to be equal to our own. And so this coexistence, I think, is something that came up for me again and again in the courses. How can you coexist in a way that doesn't oppress the other? It's hard, right? Because we need to eat and house and this and that. But that's really what life is on Earth, is trying to coexist and to be gentle and kind with each other in every way possible.
Yeah, like I don't want to put you in the spotlight, but I think it was really interesting, Claude, like with you coming at the stage of your life that you're coming, or what you've shared. I'm not gonna reveal anything that anything, any private stories, but like I have the sense like you and me had a couple of conversations about assumptions, about, you know, coming from white privilege, white guilt, and like just exploring that at the same time, like that you've had like your time to meditate, to decompress, to take some distance, to reflect. And the way that I witness you, I don't know you from before, coming to this course was like really aware of where you were coming from and very willing to, yeah, to name the things that are still work to be done, and not in a way like the Scandi guilt kind of list, not in a way like, oh fuck yeah, I am white privileged, I cannot do anything, I need to apologize. No, you were like, yeah, I mean, I am who I am. I'm trying to learn. I want to do better, and that just transpired in the way you wrote and you approached us and you showed up to conversations and stuff. So yeah, I don't know why I have to say this. I know you're not saying this podcast to anybody, but I thought about this a lot. So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Well, thank you. I don't know if I need to respond, but it certainly was an opportunity and a privilege to be part of this group. And part of what I try to do is to share it in different ways. And sometimes it's very strategic. It's like I know one person will benefit from a certain piece of writing, And then if I'm calm and strong relatively, I do my daily qigong, then I'm more able to help others and look the youth in the eye and all those things that we talked about. So I suggest we start wrapping up. We've been talking for 70 minutes now. Maybe we'll do, en français, we call it a tour de table, like around the table, if there's any final thoughts you want to put out there, and then maybe we'll wrap it up.
I think my only final thought would be that I hope this isn't our final thought and our final conversation. I would love, Claude, for example, to hear more about, you were saying you were very struck by our session with Isabel, and yeah, and maybe now isn't the moment, but yeah, I hope there'll be plenty of more moments, and I'm just feeling, yeah, feeling very grateful for what we all co-created together over the last couple of months. So thank you, everyone.
I have a question, and I don't know if I'll find answers, which is that you go through a process like this, what I think I've gone through with this course. I'm just wondering what it'll look like in a different language and a different culture, because I think different thoughts in English and I think different thoughts in Indian languages, and you can't just translate these things. And I feel kind of crippled in that aspect. And yeah, I'm just wondering what all of that means and how it looks.
Well, that topic did come up of English being, any language being limited, and in the dominance of English, and how some people were speaking a third language, or fourth, and struggling to articulate and be heard. So I think the bioregionalism approach would be that people would do it regionally in the language that they want, as well as other languages at a more global level. There needs to be some kind of authenticity to culture, not authenticity, but like you speak the language that you want, but then it gets broken up when you speak other languages. Like I'm a francophone, and I am quite different in French. I have different energy, and so I don't think I have an answer to your question, but I think it's a good one for Shaun and the leadership of the course to consider. Maybe there could be breakout groups in different languages. I'm not sure how to do it, but I understand your point.
Yeah, and not only within the course, like Kashee, do you speak another language besides Indian? Besides English, sorry. Yeah? Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Because I mean,
do. I speak a couple of Indian languages, yeah.
yeah, cool. Because think about it. Because the first time I did the course, my first thing was like, this needs to be translated into Spanish. And then Shaun gave me a book. It is translated into Spanish, but the translation's shit. So I discourage from, sorry, Shaun, you didn't translate it. It's not a good translation. Eh, but that idea has been with me, and I had a conversation with Nakasi because I have family in Guyana, and we thought like, oh, can we bring this into at least South American reality? And Venezuela and Guyana are also really different. So try to, yeah, I think it's the language, but also maybe regionally it would make sense. I don't know, putting India, Pakistan, and other of neighboring countries in one, but it's, yeah, it's a tricky one. So I'm not, this is not an answer, but it's an example that might help think things. So basically, because of the same thing we've denouncing, like 10 years ago, I had an idea of doing a podcast with my best friend called Drama y Progreso, Drama and Progress. And it was about the West or white, whatever we want to call this category, imposing the narratives. So we wanted to say we countries have the right to think about things differently. And I wasn't talking politics only, art, whatever. So basically, we're doing a podcast in 4 languages now: English, German, Spanish, and Bulgarian. And that means that we'll have guests that speak any of these languages. It's not that we're going to translate every episode into that. So maybe, and I'm doing this with 2 other friends. So that just seems like a feasible way of slowly trying to address this bigger conversation of English being the main one. Yeah, so yeah, I share that I don't know if a concern. I mean, it is a reality. English has also allowed us to connect here now today because we all speak it. So also like, yeah, we can denounce a lot of the things that have happened and also being grateful for the fact that they exist that enable this.
So I'm wrapping up. It's just basically like something that I'm telling myself is just that, like, for me, it's necessary to be able to be gentle and playful and patience when addressing these things, because if not, it just becomes too heavy and too burdensome. And it's loaded. If you just want to see the loaded stuff, it's an infinite, pool of loadedness. So yeah, kind of trying to hold that. I don't know how to do it, but at least the instruction is becoming clear. So thank you, Claude, for holding this space for this exploration. Yeah.
And I'm just feeling a lot of gratitude. And in the context of this, I want to say merci, Gunamahaget, Dhanyavad, Shukriye, Grazie. I don't know Portuguese, sorry. But anyway, it's just been great to have you as my friends online, even if we've never met in person, and this experience is yeah, definitely something I'll carry with me.
Well, I guess we could leave it at that. I'm very happy that our listeners were able to listen in to our conversation, kind of a private conversation that we've made public. And yeah, I will put links and things for people to follow. And, maybe we could do another session. I'm not planning to take the course next year because I think I have like a year, 2 years worth of stuff to work through. But I might take another course. There's other courses that Sterling College offers that are, and I'm finding more and more courses, and I try to let people know about them. They're not so much courses as they are co-learning, right? Because nobody knows the answers to this, and there's only co-learning that can really move us forward. So, shall we call it a day? I'd like to do a group photo. Isn't that funny? It's like everybody get together, smile. But I'm going to do a screenshot. So look your prettiest, and we'll use this for the cover. How about that? 1, 2, 3, ding. And I'll do another one on the wide, and that way I'll have 2 different ones. So here we go. This is the cover shot for us. Ta-da. All right, I got it. Well, thank you so much. I'll give you a call when I'm in India, Kashee, and we can chat a little bit more, and hopefully we'll be able to see some of you in person at some point somewhere. Thank you so much for sharing your
Thank you,
thoughts.
everybody.
We will talk again.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was so nice to see you all again.
Absolutely. And yeah, speak to you all soon in one medium or another, hopefully.